studio, and this evening we'll be taking on the topic, or really looking at the emerging concern about gun violence in the region. We have a number of guests, experts in different areas, who will assisting us in unravel some of the challenges that we face regionally. In studio, I have two of our guests, and we have another two online. I will invite them to introduce themselves, although at least one of the faces will be very familiar. So we'll start off with Commissioner Martin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dowe, and let me say a pleasant good evening to you and the rest of the panelists. It is indeed a pleasure to be here to make a contribution among these esteemed members of the panel on such a critical subject. I also want to say I'm Commissioner of Police, but also hold the position of the first Vice President of the Association of Caribbean Commissioners of Police, but I'm not here in the capacity of that ACCP First Vice President. I look forward to the discourse and making a valuable contribution. A good evening to all of you listening public in the diaspora and the country as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Noel?
Good evening, Mr. Dowe and panelists. I must say I'm happy to be here. I'm here, the hat that I carry is the president of the Grenada Gun and Rifle Association. And evening to all panelists and evening to all of you in public.
I notice you carry your hat and not wear it. I hope you're not putting it down. And viewers online, we have former Commissioner Gary Griffith. Commissioner, good evening and welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Good evening, Mr. Dowe, to the panelists. It is a very powerful batting lineup I've seen here that you have assembled. It is a pleasure for me to be here. I'm a previous Minister of National Security from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, also previous Commissioner of Police, and I'm here to assist in some way on a burning problem that affects the Caribbean.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. And also we have Commander Garvin Heerah. Good evening and welcome.
Hi, good evening, Colin, and good evening to esteemed panel, and of course those who are streaming online across the Caribbean. Just as Commissioner Griffith said, you've put together a good team here. Looking forward to a wonderful conversation. I'm the former head of the National Operations Center in Trinidad and Tobago, and I held that position under the stewardship of then Minister Gary Griffith. So it's good to meet him again in a conversation dealing with crime and security. And I think it's a good conversation. It's one well worth starting it at this point. You know, I'm a regional security expert, as you would have known in our conversations pre-interview. Homeland security and safe city operations is also part of my tenure. So I look forward to a good conversation with a good team this evening.
All right, and good evening. And you know, before we jump into firearms possession and crimes, I also like to start from the good perspective. So let's deal with people who carry licensed firearms. And Commissioner Martin, let me just kick off with you so you get to open back. What are some of the qualifications that would be required for a citizen to be a licensed firearm holder?
Well, first of all, I need to indicate that any and everyone who is an adult over the age of 21 can apply to be a licensed firearm holder. However, that process requires a very strict vetting mechanism is in place. A salient of that is the threat to safety and security. And that is a litmus test that is applied in the vetting mechanism. So one has to prove critically that you are at critical risk in order to own a personal firearm. But there are other boundaries, because you have persons who will apply firearm for the purpose of hunting. You have persons who will apply for firearms as being part of the rifle club, more for shooting in that regard. So it varies based on the category in which you apply and the different types of firearms that you want to carry. I might add here that only recently we have started applying a vetting process to require persons to be licensed to even carry what was originally considered as A-guns or bird guns, because that particular type of weapon is classified as a firearm in our legislation. And additionally, we have seen the evolution of those weapons into replicas mimicking that of high-powered rifles, 9mm, M16, and so they have moved to the level where they can be used for many different purposes. So we start to apply a more stringent regulation of also guns, because they can be used for committing acts of violence, intimidatory, robbery, and we have had a few reports of those. So you find with the evolution of firearms in a general context, the RGPF, and I believe across the region the same, has taken a more stringent approach in the management and regulation of the issuance and control of firearms.
Management and regulations of the issuance and control of firearms, and therefore I go to the president of the Grenada Guns and Rifle Association. Share a little bit with us, Duene, on your membership, the numbers, and who are the members of your association?
Okay, thank you again. The Grenada Gun and Rifle Association was registered as a non-profit organization back in 2003. That was under the leadership of Mr. Matthew Dowe and a few others. Since then we have evolved. The main purpose of, well, the three main areas for our existence. One would be to provide a safe area for licensed users to train and practice. Secondly, the development of the sport. And third, the issue of education of the safe handling of firearms. So those are the three main areas in which we exist for. At present, our range is at Pitia Tang, that's in St. David's, where we have most of our activities. We've had some challenges with the road, but however, that's the area that we use to practice.
Are firearms readily available to your members?
Well, the club, as of now, as you indicated in your earlier previous question, presently our membership is about a little over, from 2021 membership list was about 357, right? Not everyone have a...
Is that a pun at 357? That sounds like a magnum.
Come to think about it, should go back and check it. But it is not only for firearm users, because there will be persons, one, who may be interested in applying, right, and need the required training before actually getting a firearm. But primarily, it has been for persons with firearms, so they have a chance.
Can we add licensed firearms? Is it reasonable to assume that every member of your association is either a licensed firearm holder or one looking towards gaining a license and seeking the prerequisite training prior to making that application?
That's an excellent assumption. Right? It must be a licensed firearm holder. At this present time, we, with all what has been happening, we have implemented a lot of strict measures to ensure that all of the mechanisms that we put in place, one, in terms of logging the serial number of your firearm, when you come, when you leave, so that at any point in time that information is asked from us in terms of who was on the range, what they were able to present that information. So I think it is, from since 2003 to now, a lot has changed in terms of the firearms within Grenada and in the region. So we have to change with the time, as the Commission indicated, in terms of even air rifles and stuff, how we use it and those sorts of stuff.
Okay.
I might just add to this, that given all of the changes that has been taking place, some of the implementation activities by the Rifle Association has been provoked by the RGPF. We actually work very closely together, because whenever we identify loopholes and problems, we develop a stakeholder collaboration. We consult with them, we involve them in part of all of the decision process, and we guide them on some of the things that needs to be implemented. And sometimes they give us ideas as well on how we can better manage some elements of it. So there's a strong collaboration between the Rifle Association, the police, and firearm dealers in general to make sure that we manage this issue effectively.
Okay. Commander Heerah, if I'm to bring you in here, we talk a lot of gun crime, gun violence. Is there a distinction? And share with us what that distinction is, so that our viewers can get a good sense as to, if there is an issue, where the issue lies.
Yeah, sure. Thanks again. And I'm thankful that Duene was able to identify that he is moving assiduously along the lines of regulations and due diligence as he creates and builds on this sort of protection for his establishment and the many more that will rise up as we expand regarding gun ownership and gun use in the region. We have to be very, very cautious in how we view this, because the owner of a firearm is a licensed owner and has to go through a process of using his firearm, being competent to use his firearm, and of course spot checks. As back here in country, we would have those sort of evaluations and measurements that will have to take place prior to someone using a firearm. But to your specific question regarding violence and crime, taking a firearm and using it against someone outside of when it is supposed to be used for your protection of property, or whether it be hunting or as you said, recreational or sport, and you use that firearm now, you use that equipment, but to conduct a criminal activity, then we are talking about a crime. Using the firearm aggravatively, for instance, in a conflict situation, a licensed firearm owner, we are talking here now, and it erupts into a violent use of the weapon, we are talking violence. And somewhere along the lines, and Commissioner Martin has spoken on this in his various pronouncements, there comes a sort of what we'll call an integration, an infiltration of both uses. So you have crime, you have violence, you have the firearm. So we have to be very, very cautious on how we look at it, because using a gun by itself as a licensed firearm owner in protection of your property, whether it be sports, whether it be also an attack or self-defense, okay. Using that same licensed firearm in a domestic violence, for instance, and shooting a spouse or shooting a relative, it has now become a violent use of the licensed firearm, and it becomes a crime. So therefore, the laws and the legislation dictates such. So a firearm is not a violent piece of equipment, but it can be used based on the mindset, based on the person, and of course, based on the incident that warrants the use of the gun.
If you were to take a look regionally, and let's go there, because I know that you consult in a number of different countries regionally, the use of the firearm, is it typically in cases of violence, domestic violence, fallouts, the quarrels, or is it typically used in an organized fashion, let's say robberies, etc.? Which one do we see most prevalent?
Colin, when you say the use of the firearm, are you talking about licensed firearm owners here?
Well,
firearm holders?
But you can actually share whether in those challenges that the population faces, whether it's licensed firearms, you typically would have to take a hold of, or whether it's unlicensed, and if it is in violent domestic violence situations, we predominantly see a licensed firearm being used in those instances as opposed to an unlicensed one.
Yeah, well, let's just talk about licensed firearm holders for the moment. There's been a very, very minute, very low percentage of the licensed firearm holder using his firearm for criminal activity, or using his firearm, for instance, in the rare cases of crimes of passion, domestic violence. Very, very low. What we've seen is licensed firearm holders, for instance, protecting their property in a robbery, in a carjacking, in an attempted use to take from you, in that type of situation. We've seen where licensed firearm holders here in country and in the region actually using their firearm, using their training so as to take out a perpetrator. We've seen that. Along the lines of illegal firearms now, those firearms that have turned up on the streets, all various categories, we are seeing violent use with these firearms for robbery, gang warfare, shooting without a blatant disregard for the law. We're seeing a lot of drive-bys recently in all of our countries. In Trinidad and Tobago, we had to digest the fact of 3 young people, not yet 19 years, being killed in one of our residential areas. So we're seeing a violent use of firearms by the illegal firearm owners, but more so the correct or appropriate use of firearms by the firearm holders who are protecting their property and protecting themselves in a robbery, and very, very little. The percentage could be very low at this point. I don't have the empirical evidence of where we've actually seen a licensed firearm holder and using his firearm in a domestic violence or a crime of passion. But I know Commissioner Griffith, who would have had his exposure to statistics, would share more on that. But I can sincerely say, based on my evidence and my consultancy in the region, the use of firearms is basically within two corridors. The illegal firearm holders are using it for crime, for gang warfare, for blatant disregard and drive-by shootings, where there's a sort of a new trend to have crime scenes with 50 and 60 rounds of ammunition being collected, as to the original firearm holders who are using these firearms to protect themselves against people like that who may be infiltrating or breaching their property in an act of crime.
Commissioner Griffith, we've heard in terms of an application for a gun license. We have a rifle association here in Grenada, and yet still we see hundreds of murders. I think Trinidad topped 600 in 2022. Any idea as to where these guns are coming from?
Yes, definitely. Having liaised with the U.S. Embassy, they confirmed that over 95 to 97% of illegal firearms that enter Trinidad and Tobago come from the legitimate ports of entry, the legal ports of entry. So this perception we continue to hear, we need to secure our borders, it is really based on the ports. So it is very rare, especially with Trinidad being in close proximity to the mainland. Few illegal firearms enter Trinidad and Tobago from the mainland in comparison to what you will get from the legitimate ports of entry. So I'll give you an example. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service would seize about 800 odd firearms per annum. So after 10 years, you could seize about 8,000 odd. But in one night, a container may go missing from the port with over 10,000 firearms. So what you would have seized in 10 years can actually get back onto the streets in one night. And that shows the importance for us to have a proper border protection to deal with our legal ports of entry. The difference between legal weapons and illegal weapons, it is really chalk and cheese. We in Trinidad and Tobago have always had this situation that when it is we are unable to control the violence in the country, we turn to the problem with legal firearms. But as Garvin stated, over 2,000 murders committed in the last 5 years in Trinidad and Tobago by the use of firearms. Almost 99% have been by illegal firearms. Yet, unfortunately, the state has put more time, resources, effort, manpower, strength to look at legitimate firearms. And again, as Garvin would have stated, there are very few situations under my watch, in my 3 years, not one legal firearm was lost, stolen, used for a crime, or used for a murder. In fact, many persons with legal firearms have been able to protect themselves, their assets, and their family because the state has been unable to protect them based on our situation. And it shows the importance of it. The big problem we have with legal firearms has to do not so much with the use of it in a violent manner, but negligence. And that is why I put a comprehensive system to transform that concept of firearms being issued to persons. We have over 50,000 applicants for legal firearms. I was able to issue just about 4,000, so that's less than 10%. Half of those would have been for police officers, defense force personnel, customs, prison officers whose lives are at risk, and they have to keep their weapon at their station when they get back home, and then their life will be at risk, as I said. So that becomes the problem with negligence, where persons are given firearms based on a stringent test. You have psychometric testing, background check, you give justification, you have the spouse given approval. But then we never had the situation with it being checked to make sure that the person is of sound body and mind to ensure that he or she can keep a firearm. And that's where you have the situation of negligence through having it lost, negligent discharge. And that is what is just as important, getting the firearm issued, but also making sure you have continuous checking of that individual to make sure they understand that to prevent a stoppage, to prevent a negligent discharge, and making sure that you're not in a financial or domestic problem now that you did not have a few years ago when you were issued with that firearm.
Okay, and thanks. Commissioner Martin, we heard Commissioner Griffith say the majority of the firearms, illegal firearms, coming through in Trinidad and Tobago is from the legal ports of entry. So it's probably being snuck in. Is that the same that we see here in Grenada?
I agree with him. We do have indications, and we have had seizures of illegal firearms coming through the port of entry. Our intelligence suggests that the various forms of shipping mechanism that had been utilized, barrels and containers and so forth, even vehicles, provides a very convenient means for hiding firearms in parts to traffic. But we must bear in mind as well that as island states across the region and our very porous borders, we also have the threat from the maritime space. And the maritime space is much bigger than the land space across the region. And we do not have the maritime assets to more effectively police that. So we do have air, land, and maritime threat as it relates to illegal firearm getting to our shores. And sadly, it is affecting all of the islands of the region. Grenada is still holding a little bit strong in terms of the extent, but we are seeing the trend of repeated use of firearms, albeit is not ending up being bullets in bodies, but certainly we have seized more firearms. We have seized 13 2021, 26 in 2022, and we are now up to already 7 for January alone. So that is an indication of the trajectory and the availability of illegal firearms on the streets. But I do agree that certainly shipping is a problem, air, land, and sea is a serious threat and vulnerable. The other part of it, though, is what are the mechanisms that we do have in place for preventing that. And sadly, certainly Grenada is definitely that case, along with some of the other islands. We lack the technical mechanism, the scanners, to be able to more properly check the volume of stuff that's coming in. Customs and Port Authority, compliments to them. I think they do well within the capacity and capabilities afforded to them, but we need to increase that. And I must hasten to indicate that this has been brought to the attention of Prime Minister in a Grenada context, and efforts have been made for us to pursue scanning equipment for the port, and the Port Authority is also working on it as well. So we do hope in short order we will have an improved scanning mechanism at our respective ports of entry as well.
Okay, Prime Minister is on record by making some statements, but I would want to just do a quotation from Prime Minister. But let's just take a brief break and then we'll be back.
Sure.
Your life is yours, your future's in your hands. Your body is yours, that's why you need a plan. You gotta plan your family, avoid HIV, get the education from the Grenada Planned Parenthood Association. We offer STI screening, gender-based violence counseling, prenatal and postnatal checks, injectables, condoms, pap smears, and other sexual reproductive services. Open Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. The Pointe Street, St. George's. Whether male or female, it doesn't matter. We're here to make your life better. Grenada Planned Parenthood Association. For appointments, call 440-3341.
Total is one of the world's largest oil companies with a top quality line of lubricants. Total Lubricants has a full product line from passenger cars, motorcycle, heavy industrial equipment, mining, trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing machines and vehicles. Total Lubricants, winning championships in motorsports, including Formula One and World Rally Championships. Total Lubricants are available at all Rubis service stations, leading automotive shops, and distributed by Huggins.
Have you heard about the new Softweave bathroom tissue with Total Hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Softweave Total Hygiene bathroom tissue, available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Softweave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
Rep your colors. Hot 98 presents the 473 Colors Boat Ride. Going on Saturday, February 4. Get your tickets now at gotofed.com for only $65. Food included. Boarding time 7 p.m. The boat sails at 7:30. Music on board by the Hot 98 DJs plus other guest DJs.
Baby, calm down, calm down.
Rep your colors on the boat, cause this one here is gonna be epic. Lock the date, Saturday, February 4th. Hot 98, 473 Colors Boat Ride. Don't you miss this.
Where is the sense of value, self-control, respect and restraint for others, and the value of life among our youth?
Good evening and welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. We're discussing the emerging challenges with gun violence here in Grenada and regionally. Commissioner Martin, before we broke, you was talking about additional resources coming to Grenada Ports Authority and Customs in order to combat the illegal importation of firearms. Our Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell, recently said that Grenada is under threat from the illegal importation of firearms. Is there a specific event that would have prompted the Prime Minister to make such a strong statement?
I can't say what prompted Prime Minister. You probably will have to ask him that yourself. But I can tell you that Prime Minister is acutely aware and very concerned with the issue of illegal firearms and its proliferation. As Minister of National Security, he's briefed and informed on all of the police work in this regard, our intelligence and the actual seizures, and he's very aware of what is happening. So I am not surprised, and I can dare say as well that I fully support his comments in this regard as well, because firearms, it presents deadly force across all of the communities in our region. And we definitely, as small societies, we cannot, one life lost by firearm is one life too much. And we cannot risk in any way the possibility of allowing our small island with such a small population to become impacted in a manner as happened in other islands in the region. I might say, and I go back to the point of Garvin, some persons advocate that we don't have a crime problem in the region. What we have is a violence problem, and I want to justify that point. We have a violence problem when you look at a number of islands from a 15-member CARICOM state listed among the highest for percentages of murder per 100,000 in the world. Added to that, a number of islands, including Grenada, have a reduction in crime. This year, Grenada clocked a 6% contraction in crime. But we are seeing in Grenada and other islands of the region a year-on-year increase in violent crimes. And of those violent crimes, gun crime is critical of concern.
Garvin, I'll definitely come to you. We don't have a crime, we don't have a big crime problem, or we have a bigger violence problem. Violence. What are your comments?
Colin, I want to get to that, but I want to just go back a little bit to something that Commissioner Martin had said when he spoke about, yes, we are trying to do some stuff here in country. We're trying to do all that we can in the prevention aspects of it, but there's still an issue existing outside there in the maritime space. We have, and Commissioner Griffith alluded to it. It's not that we need vessels and resources and boats sailing up and down so that we can protect our borders. Guys, it is more than that. And Commissioner Griffith was correct when he said it, in that looking at border protection goes beyond that. It is not just assets patrolling spaces. What we have to consider is maritime domain awareness. And when you look at maritime domain awareness, part of port operations comes into play. And therefore, dealing with the issues of the illegal arms ending up in our ports, in containers or in barrels or in washing machines or vehicles, as Commissioner Martin says, starts way back to the port of departure. It involves shipping agents, involves logistics, it involves finances, movement of money, systems, computerized systems that are being used to masquerade legit business when there is an illegal or illegit reasoning for this importation. So that import-export trade, and I may end up, people want to dispute or go down the road with me, and I'm prepared to stand on my soapbox, because there are very legit businesses that are presenting themselves as import, export, and distribution, but there's a hidden agenda. And we have to also recognize that strengthening our muscle in the region means a more standardized operation amongst our countries. Grenada has a problem, St. Martin has a problem, St. Vincent has a problem, Trinidad has a problem. We have a common problem amongst the islands. So therefore, we need to standardize how we do business, standardize how we regulate against these issues, and we have to move away from holding things to our chest. Sometimes you may be running high-level operations, be it in Commissioner Griffith's shoes when he ran operations, or Commissioner Martin or myself as the head of the NOC, and you're waiting, you're biting your nails, you're waiting on another country to release some intelligence integral to you striking in your country or in your sea space or in your airspace or on the ground or in a warehouse, and it's late in coming or it never comes. And some people hold on to information and hold on to intelligence. We need to break those walls and build bridges, and therefore I'm saying a more concise, integrated approach to sharing intelligence, sharing operations, and maybe even cross-fertilization of some of our expertise in order to ensure that we can run good operations together as a region and not individual and silos as country. I would speak further unless you want to show this clip, or should I continue?
I just want to bring Gary in here because what I'm hearing from you is that the criminals seem to be cooperating a whole lot better than our regional security forces, whether we're talking police or ministries of national security. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'm on now.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, right. So I'm piggybacking from what Commander Heerah said. He hit the nail on the head. In 1990, when Trinidad and Tobago had our attempted coup, there was a commission of inquiry that was done. And the commission of inquiry, I think that took place somewhere around 2012, 2013. In that commission of inquiry, it stated that the main reason for the law enforcement dropping the ball was because of lack of coordination, lack of communication. Hence the reason why the main points and the recommendation made in the commission of inquiry into our attempted coup was the need for a coordinating system. Therein lies the establishment of the National Operations Center that was led by Commander Heerah. And the reason I'm saying this is that this played a very big part towards transforming Trinidad and Tobago's security in 2013 to 2015. It was the highest reduction in serious crime in 25 years. The point being is that the same thing that we did for Trinidad and Tobago is required for the Caribbean. Proper coordination, proper collaboration, real-time information being fed. So yes, we do have regional security. Thankfully, we have the ACCP. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have a system through the Transnational Organized Crime Unit. But what is required is that type of coordination that Garvin mentioned to ensure that real-time information can be fed immediately from one island to the other. Because sometimes it is not just a container that will be coming in. Sometimes it's just vessels under the cover of saying that they're fishing, and they're going from one island to the other, piggybacking. And with that shows the importance for us to have proper coordination in real time, and also to deal with our partners in North America. As a commissioner, I met with the head of police in Miami and New York, because those were the places where those containers would be coming from. And we need to make sure we have proper coordination with those individuals, because our gang members here, they liaise with those individuals in North America to assist in trying to find the illegal weapons to be brought into the Caribbean.
Am I hearing you clearly?
Collaboration. We also need to liaise with our partners in North America. So as Garvin mentioned, we need to have that type of operational center to ensure proper intelligence. There's no such thing as a perfect crime. And if we have proper coordination between the different islands in the Caribbean, it will help greatly towards us solidifying a base to prevent the illegal weapons from entering the country, or at least to minimize it.
Okay. Commissioner Martin?
Yeah, I just wanted, I agree with all that is being said. Of course, experts definitely in their own right, and I do agree with this. But I want to add, and here I probably put on my ACCP cap to indicate that a lot is being done, and the threat is well identified as indicated by Commissioner Griffith. But a lot has been done, and I think it will be a little time before we start seeing the results. As it stands, through CARICOM impacts, we now have collaboration with some of the entities that Gary is now referring to. Interpol, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, Homeland Security in the U.S. All of these entities are now moved to the Caribbean, led by a CARICOM Impacts initiative to bridge collaboration and cooperation with those entities from possible source destinations for firearms.
In November, let me just interrupt you a little bit. In November of last year, Prime Minister Gonzalez of St. Vincent signaled in his view that President Biden needs to take responsibility, own up, and act on the increased importation of illegal firearms into the Caribbean. Is that a fair comment, and do you believe enough is being done based on what you're just sharing in terms of the collaborations?
I can't comment on the remarks from Prime Minister Gonzalez. I'm not privy to his information that leads him to make those remarks. But what I can say is that for sure there is a firmer response from the U.S. in collaborating with the region through CARICOM impacts by the formulation of the ATF, moving the ATF, moving Interpol, moving Homeland Security to work greater with the Caribbean islands in addressing the problem of it coming from the source. As a matter of fact, the impact is now leading on the creation. We are in the final stages of establishing a Caribbean gun crime unit for the said purpose, as Commissioner Griffith just indicated, for the purpose of creating intelligence and better sharing, timely sharing of intelligence among police forces. So we are moving in the right direction. You may probably ask whether it is too little, too late. That will be up for assessment eventually, but I think we are making the efforts that are necessary to ensure that we can address this problem and hopefully see it in reversed.
Commander Heerah, let me just ask you, from where you sit on certainly in a regional perspective, what is the attraction in this importation of guns? I mean, it seemed to be increasing. Former Commissioner Griffith said that in one night, 10,000 guns can be landed in Trinidad and Tobago. Why?
Well, we have to understand that we're dealing with, and Commissioner Griffith spoke about it, the establishment of the Transnational Organized Crime Unit in Trinidad and Tobago, and the great work that these men and women are doing, both overtly and covertly. Commissioner Martin went on to talk about the expanded use of, international counterparts and the sharing of information, and of course, that is good. It's lined off. But we must not dismiss nor diffuse the importance of what we are looking at, which is the illegal trade. And once you talk about the illegal trade, transnational organized crime comes into the room. Mm-hmm. And therefore, before, we being a transshipment point in the region for narcotics coming out of Colombia, coming out of Brazil, coming out of Venezuela, contraband, human beings. In some instances, I don't have the evidence to prove, they talked about organs and all of that type of stuff. Things were, and those type of illegal incidents or trade or criminal activity was coming through our islands and going into Europe, going into North America, and reaching as far as Africa. However, now we are seeing a product is leaving the South American mainland, leaving Europe, leaving the US, and coming into our country. So there is an attraction for an illegal trade, but now it's coming to our homeland. It is not going out. Before, when it was going out, there were a lot of fences and a lot of stuff that went up from the US and Europe so as to protect those things coming onto their borders. Now, a product from their country, their region, their continents are coming into our country. So that's the whole issue. What we have picked up, my team and I, based on the research, is that there's a lot of stupidity on the grounds and the streets of our countries. Streets against streets. Buildings against buildings, where adults and parents used to go to church and go to school and share the community together, have been divided now based on stupidity. This is my street, this is my border, whatever. And in order to, it wasn't about protecting drug turfs and protecting property. What we've seen is along that we have seen some encouragement by officials with contracts and paying money, and people want to protect their little zone. And when it was pistols and shotguns, all of a sudden, based on that attraction, everybody's shooting for now, and no pun intended, for the Air Jordans of guns. So you don't need to own an Air Jordan. And the Air Jordan of guns is the AR-15. So if I have a little turf, and I have a little zone, and I have my little contract area and that type of stuff, I don't want a pistol anymore. I don't want a shotgun anymore. What I want to do is an AR-15. I want to prove to the other blocks that I have an Air Jordan of guns. And therefore, the new attraction, the new brand to look good and to amongst bragging rights amongst the blocks is to own an Air Jordan, and the Air Jordan is the AR-15. And these guys are robbing, kidnapping, shooting, conducting illegal activity to get the funding in order to import the Air Jordans, to import the AR-15s. And there is a legitimate trade in the SALW, small arms and light weapons. and the Caribbean is the market, and money is being made via the channels and the corridors of transnational organized crime. So while all the ATF and all of these strong agents are coming into muscle via CARICOM impacts, we want to see also that there's some sort of penetration and breaching towards the whole issue of the money movement, the gun shows where these guns are being purchased, those who are fronting and dealing with the sales and the delivery, and of course the distribution of these weapons, also being treated in a collective, collaborative, and coordinated intelligence operational approach.
Commissioner Griffith, if I just bring you in here, we move from transshipment of illegal substances to the importation of illegal guns. We heard Garvin saying stupidity might be a cause. But why are we in such large numbers bringing guns into our territories, do you believe?
Well, you realize it varies. It varies in Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica to probably some other islands in the Caribbean. The problem you will see that exists in Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica as it pertains to illegal firearms, it is chalk and cheese compared to other islands. It is not to trivialize it, because thankfully those islands, it has not been a major issue. But you can't just trivialize it. You have to continue doing, such as what Edwin is doing for his country and other commissioners of police. You got to keep that deterrent, ensure that there's no product of opportunity. So what happens in islands such as Trinidad, Tobago, and Jamaica? What makes us those islands that makes it so exciting for all of these illegal firearms entering the country? The word gangs. The main aspect of it is gang warfare, and that gang warfare involves individuals who want to control blocks. They want to control certain areas. I do not know the main problem for Jamaica, but what exists in Trinidad and Tobago is we fed the gangs, and when I mean that over last 15 to 17 years, governments have come and gone, and what they have done is continue to give gangs state contracts. They use the state contracts not to assist the community, but the extra profit they get will now be used to purchase more sophisticated weapons, hire more gang members, put hits on other gangs, that you want to take their state contracts. So it is a lose-lose situation. I spoke about it as the Minister of National Security, even against my own government at the time. Government before me, after I left as minister, continued on the same pattern. So we're in a situation now where the state might provide more resources through giving state contracts to the criminals than they do to the police service, which makes it very difficult. So it means that the criminals may have greater access for profit, because of their profit, to buy the most sophisticated firearms, and then the police officers may not. So it makes it very difficult. But the main issue that has caused the problem in Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, really and truly, as it is pertains to gang violence, and that has been the catalyst for the majority of murders in Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, thank you. Duene, I want to bring you in here, your own thoughts on the importation of illegal firearms, and whether or not your members see this as a way of supplementing or enhancing their own collections.
Well, thank you again. It's important for us to highlight, we're basically the voice of the licensed firearm users and persons who would like to own and have a licensed firearm. And the Grenada Gun and Rifle Association is well aware that the window that we look through, it's a subset of the window that the commissioner would look to. He has a wider view and even much wider view of as the Minister of National Security, which is the Prime Minister. So we're well aware that our view would be a subset of the larger issue. The challenge many of our members have indicated is that the policies and which we work closely to support a lot of it tend to affect the licensed users. And it's a challenge that many of the members have raised with us, because a criminal, these policies don't affect criminals. And as we work together to tighten and control, the criminals will always seem a way to find, and those laws and do not affect them. And I think sometimes we can look at the approach that we take. We can look at a different approach. For example, when you look at the crimes and the age involved in the gang, it's very easy to look at the licensed users or certain aspects, but you have issues as relates to where we are with the family, where the culture of the country, where being your neighbor's keeper, right? So you then find that you have the youths not having things to get involved in, end up in gangs, and then the gangs have that sort of activity. So it's important for us to, under the Grenada Gun and Rifle Association, is to try and understand why it is many times, and that's how we feel, or that's how the members feel, that whenever there is a upsurge in crime, the license users get the licks. And
let me ask you this: why you own a gun?
The use of a firearm, one, protection of life and property. Two, if you're into sport, shooting. Three, you have hunters. You have, I think in some of the other countries, you have the collector's item. So there are different reasons, but those are the main reasons.
Let me ask this: in terms of your membership, is it for use or is it to serve as a deterrent? For those who say protection of life and property?
Well, different members, different persons, different license holders, the different reasons for, depend on where they live and depend on their job function, depend on what threat level that they see, if they're into sport and if they're into hunting. And as the Commissioner indicated, the change in the law in 2008, which then deemed air guns as a firearm, then you have that aspect of it in terms of like hunting or dealing with rodents in your property. So it varies. It's difficult. There's no one reason. Different persons, as the Commission indicated, has to prove the reason why they'd want the firearm, and then.
Commissioner, if I'm just to bring you here, some people say I have a gun as a deterrent, but if it says to be a deterrent, then the criminal must know that you have it, which means that you must show it off or brandish it. And is that part of escalating the situation?
Well, the brandishing of a firearm is an offense to start with. And I think if an individual, because firearms are attractive to criminals, making it known that you do have a firearm makes you attack it. And we have had many stolen firearms from individuals, leaving it in their car and so forth, where people know you have a firearm, so they look for your moments of vulnerability and capitalize on it. And this is one of the reasons why we have to be stringent in our vetting of issuance, and I think Gary indicated in also following up in the inspections annually to make sure that they are there for compliance.
Do you have the resources to do the follow-ups? I mean, I got and I agree with both Gary and Garvin, but Gary mentioned this from the psychological perspective, any change in circumstances, etc. Do you have that type of resources?
We do checkups every year, but I think we can be better of it. Sometimes the divisions will actually have a responsibility of checking all of the firearm holders in their division. But sometimes you find we fall on that because the dictates of policing will take precedence over a rudimentary administrative checking of a firearm. So sometimes we don't follow through in all cases, but as much as is possible, we do try to do that. But as this issue becomes of greater concern, we need to make sure that we follow up. We've had cases where individual probably died and the firearm was at home and the family had to call for us to recover the firearm. Hence the reason why it is very important in making sure that you do the follow-ups. But I want to make one plug on the issue of the rifles. Just for persons that are listening, do not tend to think that guns are treated at the same threshold of a licensed firearm. As a matter of fact, when we start regularizing guns, all of the persons that already had a registered letter for having a gun, we ask them just to come in so you can have your license to formalize it. The threshold of approval for a gun is a much lower level than that of a high-powered firearm. Okay. So it's important to make that distinction that they're not treated the same. But what we continue to emphasize is that we need to regularize them in all sense, and particularly now that the A-guns have moved to a level of replicas. If I put a replica A-gun and a real firearm on the table now, you will not know the difference. And so in that case, it is very, very crucial that we do regulate it. Thank you.
One of the things that we have been doing throughout at least the last four years, dealing with annual symposiums, at least maybe twice a year, where we would pull all our members together to understand the law. We, with various persons from the legal fraternity and even from the police force, will come and highlight some of the concerns, because we believe that if one of our members fall, all of us fall. So we have to ensure that we ensure that all of them understand the law, the implications, when, where, what they should do to avoid some of the challenges, so that the focus by the force can be with illegal and not necessarily the challenges of or the mistakes or errors. But I also want to add that it is important to highlight the issue of persons with illegal firearms and ammunition. Many of us in the community know members who have illegal firearms, legal ammunition. Many of us know persons who bring it, and we say nothing. Right? We say nothing, and then when the issue happens, then there's an outcry. And I think everyone must take responsibility to ensure that when we see those things, that we report it. And also the penalty when you're caught with an illegal firearm or illegal ammunition as compared to other crimes. That needs to be strengthened, so that it also adds as a deterrent to persons thinking of getting an illegal firearm or illegal ammunition. So those are some of the recommendations that we thought of, that we had submitted and
Okay, strengthening of the consequences. Viewers, we'll come back with this discussion as we wrestle with the challenges of illegal firearms. It's a quick break, and we'll be right back.
You ate well, drank and indulged, laughed and had so much fun for the festive season. But now it's time. It's time for some serious detox business at Nirvana Detox Center and Natural Health Store. Start the year right with your health as a priority. Cleanse and flush your blood, liver, and kidneys with quality herbs and supplements. Purchase one of our detox combo packs starting from $100. Purchase a full body detox pack starting from $500. Get 10% off on colonic irrigation. Get a chance to win a free colonic irrigation treatment and product coupons with every purchase. We are located in Grandin, minutes before the Food Fair Shopping Center, immediately opposite the old Capital Bank building in the Regency Commercial Suites. Give us a call at 231-6642 or 418-7115 or visit nirvana.gd for more info. It's time for some serious detox business at Nirvana Detox Center and Natural Health Store. We know real body care. This offer is valid until March 31st, 2023. Terms and conditions apply.
It's time that we realize that we must work together to thrive. As we know it, the sky and below it. Could I never have more wonder? Yeah, with life and all you see and the climate's changing.
But hope is remaining.
And we can't ignore the future. It depends on you and me. One chance, all that we got. One voice, together we stand. Take care, the world where we live. Permite a todos vivir. Tomamos la oportunidad para guardar la humanidad. And I must leave no one behind because we are one climate, one Caribbean. One climate, one Caribbean.
Do you have muscular pain that no one can find a solution for? Are you tired of taking meds for joints and other pains? Hills and Valley Medicare Center on Grenville Street, St. George is here to help you heal. We will help you map a path to your full recovery. Visit us Monday to Saturday for a consultation with our on-site doctor, physiotherapist, and massage team. You will be glad you did. Our Medicare Center, a proud member of the Hills and Valley group of companies. On the hilltop or in the valley, we are with you wherever life takes you. Hills and Valley Pharmacy. Your health is our business.
Citizens WeatherGuard Pro. For every project, there's only one Pro.
Rep your colors. Hot 98 presents the 473 Colors Boat Ride. Going on Saturday, February 4. Get your tickets now at gotofed.com for only $65. Food included. Boarding time 7 p.m. The boat sails at 7:30. Music on board by the Hot 98 DJs plus other guest DJs.
Baby, calm down, calm down.
Rep your colors on the boat, cause this one here is gonna be epic. Lock the date, Saturday, February 4th. Hot 98 473 Colors Boat Ride. Don't you miss this.
The issue of repeat offenders being granted bail in large drug trafficking cases is disheartening to the Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit, and both the Minister of Home Affairs, Robeson Ben, and the head of the Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit are not happy about it.
We're concerned, too, in some instances where it appears that they are related to the use of illegal firearms, and that they seem to be getting off lightly otherwise in terms of sentencing.
Welcome back, viewers. We're discussing the challenges faced regionally with the importation and use of illegal guns and gun crimes in general. I have Commissioner of Police of Grenada, Edwin Martin, with us, the President of the Guns and Rifle Association, Grenada, Mr. Duene Noel, and online we have Commander Garvin Heerah and also former Commissioner of Police Griffith. Commander Heerah, let me just bring you in here. Who are some of the perpetrators of the gun crimes that we're seeing regionally? And quite often, hypothetically, we say, certainly in the Grenada context, we jump on the deportees. They learn their bad behaviors in the U.S., they have come in, and they are the ones really perpetuating these crimes. Is that a fair comment as you look in the region, in the OECS in particular? I know for Trinidad you cited gangs as an issue, but in the other islands, would you say deportees are a major challenge?
No, and I'm thankful that you cited the OECS because of their research and some of our joint research and deliberations have shown that we could have easily said, if we were talking some years back, we could have said the deportees had a part to play in this. But the present, and based on the present, based on technology, based on transnational organized crime, based on criminal activity, based on the sophistication of those guys sitting down there on the blocks or under the mango tree or in the little communities, don't underestimate those guys' ability to penetrate international systems, to have those video calls and cell phone calls and codes, and speaking a whole different language regarding the importation or the import and export trade of arms and ammunition into this region. Those fellas have jumped into a realm of sophistication. A lot of it is being assisted based on their networks, and you alluded to it when you talked about the collaboration amongst gangs and criminals as to the collaboration amongst law enforcement and agents of the state. So the perpetrators, the users, the customers for these illegal arms within the region are the gangs, are the criminals, and are those who want these firearms to basically commit crimes, to strike fear into their opponents or more or less the other gangs, and also into the citizenry. But there are layers. For instance, it ends up in the hands of the criminal. But there's a channel, as I mentioned. There's a course. There are steps and various stop-off points before this weapon ends up in the hands of this criminal. So there are illegal businessmen who are masking themselves, who are bringing and paying for and fronting and doing the purchases and that type of stuff. There are agents who have been touched by corrosion and are now facilitating clearances, containers, paperwork and systems. There are agents within the port security, the airport security, loading, offloading truck drivers who are aware of all of this. So there's a criminal network of an OCG, an organized crime group. The proliferation of arms and ammunition is the product. But yes, it has a customer. There's an interest. There's an attraction. There's somebody who wants to purchase this product, but there are various layers that are playing a part in this illegal trade. So I'm saying it's a joint sort of participation in the illegal activity.
Okay. Gary, I heard there's always the he and him. Is gun violence and participation in illegal activity gender specific? In other words, the young men, and we don't see it among young women, or are they playing a different role?
Well, no, but sometimes you actually would have females now acting as the front. So they are there will be women in gangs, and they will be in the front to transport drugs, transport illegal weapons. So if there's a roadblock, they hope that because of who they are, that they will not be thoroughly searched. So we do have these type of clandestine operatives that are part of the gangs. But when it pertains to those who actually pull the trigger, on most occasions it would be the young men. But again, there are ways that we can fight it. The same way this is that Garvin mentioned, that the gangs have and the criminals, they have some type of sophistication. We do as well. There's technology that can be accessible, and it should be distributed throughout the Caribbean that we use. We use the technology that for the first time ever, there were 11 kidnappings, and in 11 kidnappings, we were able no longer just to give money to the kidnappers and for them to release the victim, but we were able to infiltrate, make the raid, arrest the kidnappers, and be able to release the victim without payment being made. They didn't know what happened. Things such as a social media monitoring response team, the use of drones, the use of scanners. Even from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we acquired scanners that can actually scan containers. And then somehow after I left, they're not being used. The concept of having a highly trained tactical unit, heavily polygraphed, because there's no such thing as the perfect police service. There would be rogue elements. How do you remove those rogue elements from tipping off the criminal elements? If we are about to have an operation, you must have an elite unit. When it is I formed the special operation response team, that worked. So the concept of scanners, drones, social media monitoring team, having covert operatives. In NYPD, they probably have about 35,000 police officers, a few thousand drive taxis, sell hot dogs that the other police officers do not know they exist, trying to get persons to infiltrate into the system. All of these things can work, and the technology that I said can be made available, because our North American counterparts, as Edwin mentioned, they are very helpful because they know the concern in Trinidad and Tobago and throughout, heading from Trinidad and Tobago or Guyana all the way up north. So having that type of collaboration, thankfully, because of impacts, because of the ACCP, it has worked. We are building on it, but there's a lot more we have to do. But as I said, there are systems and the type of technology that can be used to assist us in this.
Let me go simple, and I got the technology that you mentioned. The Minister of National Security and also Commissioner of Police Trinidad and Tobago recently said that there will be no gun amnesty. They're going to police, they're going to capture the weapons. We saw a different approach in Jamaica, where in November of last year, there was a gun amnesty, and some 101 guns, I think, were returned, and some 3,000 rounds of ammunition. Does it make sense, in your view, to have a gun amnesty? And in my respectful view, only 101 weapons are returned, and from what Prime Minister Holness said, the majority of those were expired license or deaths by the licensed firearms holders being returned, as opposed to illegal guns being turned in.
Well, I could go quickly on this. I did a lot of research on it. We try to piggyback a lot from what we see in North America. That can be of value because on many occasions you'll have law-abiding citizens, for want of a better word, because they want to protect their family, they may have an illegal firearm. And now they're holding on to it, and then they start realizing that the state can protect them. So there's no need for you to have something like this. You do not want to throw it away for it to get in the hands of a criminal. Therein lies the value of a gun amnesty. In the Caribbean, we do not have that problem. The criminal who has the vast majority of the weapons that we have that are illegal, almost everyone is in the hands of a criminal. And because that is their tool of trade, they are not going to say, let me hand over my firearm because I intend to turn a new leaf. Added to which, because of the concept of ballistic testing, if it is that you hand over that weapon, and you see from ballistic testing that weapon was used to commit a crime, if not a murder, that person cannot get a get-out-of-jail-free card. So that is why the gun amnesty is going to be of very little value in the Caribbean because of the type of system that we have. It is not about law-abiding citizens collecting a weapon and now they want to hand it back over. The criminal is not going to hand over his tool of trade. It is easily accessible in Trinidad and Tobago for a criminal to get an illegal firearm, and he's not going to hand it over. So the value of the gun amnesty may not work. I just want to add quickly a comment that Duene made. He said that that usually people criticize the persons with legal firearms. I know in Trinidad and Tobago, if West Indies lose a test match, the Minister of National Security and the previous Commissioner of Police will blame persons with legal firearms. That has always been a problem. Blame legal firearms for everything. And the data is there to show it is not true. Which is why I do not know if the same situation is in Grenada, or in the Caribbean, but in Trinidad and Tobago, every person who has a licensed firearm, you must do the ballistic test. And with that ballistic test, it can ensure that if at any time there's a crime committed with the use of a firearm, you can pinpoint that weapon to the crime. So our Minister of National Security, unfortunately, when you have a minister who does not understand law enforcement, he said, well, you know what, all these killings, maybe some of it is true legal firearms. We could prove it is not, because the barrel with the grooves, you can tell where the weapon, if the weapon came from a legitimate firearm holder. So once that happens, it takes away that red herring of trying to blame persons with legal firearms for the number of murders that will take place, which really and truly would be due to illegal firearms.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Martin, gun amnesty, any thoughts on that? And what is the RGPF doing to arrest what seems to be a trending situation with the acquisition of guns and hopefully not, but the use of them for violent crimes?
Well, first of all, on the issue of amnesty, I do believe amnesty has a value, and maybe the determination as whether or not to use or implement amnesty will probably be determinant on the state of which the problem of firearm exists in your society. At our stage, I believe an amnesty makes sense, but I believe it should go along with something else. And that something else should be stiffer penalties. So you have an opportunity now, if you have illegal firearms, to hand it in by a certain deadline. If you don't, then our penalties will shift from a 5-year sentence to a 12 or 15-year sentence. And I'm just speaking hypothetically. Mm-hmm. But there must be more severe punishments to deter the persons wanting to have that. And then if you get to that stage and you actually arrest and persons are so sentenced, then of course you make that public. So I support, in our circumstances, I do support the idea that an amnesty can help, but it should go along with something else to enhance deterrence. As it relates to RGPF efforts, quite a bit has been done, and I think we indicate of the role we play as well on the regional initiative. But before we go there, it is clear for us to understand very clearly that there is an active, vibrant firearm market thriving in the region. Our intelligence suggests that even in Grenada, the sale of an illegal firearm is about $7,000 for a pistol. It means, therefore, that that market is attractive to investors, and I believe Garvin alluded to it some point in his comments. So it is important that we understand that now illegal firearms is becoming a viable business option by some operatives, and because of the profit that you can derive from it, the potential now to corrupt public officials become on par, or it might be surpassing that of illegal narcotics. So this is a serious issue that we need to address. Very serious issue. We recognize as a police force that we do not have the wherewithal to address this problem. We have in identifying this as the peripheral problem of the transnational organized crime Garvin alluded to, we created our most critical tool being a SIC, which is a Strategic Criminal Intelligence Cell. That unit brings together Customs, Special Branch, Drug Squad, CID, FIU, to work together to identify where are the common threats existing in these respective entities, and we start joint targeting. All of these departments contribute to forming a task force to jointly target individuals. And in that context, firearm is a top priority. Suspects for illegal firearm and targeting those. As a matter of fact, we experimented at one stage in creating a dedicated firearms unit within CID. Because of the pressures of investigating other issues, we had to pull back on that. But the SIC remains, that stand-up SIC, in operating with all of the other entities in law enforcement locally. But more than that, I think we need to have a look going forward into the harmonization of legislation regionally. And I just want to unpack that a bit for you. The harmonization of legislation will give us teeth that where someone from Grenada commits an offense in Trinidad, I can send to Trinidad the record of conviction to Trinidad that it can be used for sentencing, and vice versa. We have issues of crimes being committed in different space, and you do not have, you are in Grenada specifically on electronic crimes, for example, given the advent of social media. And crimes committed, electronic crimes are being committed against the laws in Grenada in Trinidad. The perpetrator is in Trinidad, but because they're not within the jurisdiction, you cannot prosecute. As we look at that measure of this whole collaborative approach that we need to take, because we are as strong as our weakest link. And if we don't have a collaboration together, we will not solve this problem. If we can look at harmonization of legislation, it will give us more teeth to reach people even cross-border in addressing criminal offenses, staying in one state and committing another, as well as sharing criminal records to assist with sentencing. Wherever the criminal is caught, it means that we must use all what is available to us so that the punishment can be more intense and more severe. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. Go ahead, Edwin.
I think it's also important to add, years ago, and I know Mr. Dowe, when you were younger, you heard somebody outside and you would feel comfortable going outside to see who it was. The criminals now are coming with with more. The weapons that they use are no longer just a stick or a greasy body. They're now coming with cutlass and firearms. And I think users or persons at home would want to feel a sense of comfort, so that if they feel a threat on the outside and they call the police, they have an opportunity before the police come to at least safeguard themselves. And I think one of the areas that we have been working on was the issue of how do we assist members to apply properly for a firearm. And there has been some changes. For example, you need the psychoanalysis, and those things are extremely good to ensure that you filter out. But our members have had some concerns in terms of the length of time taken on what qualifies A and not qualify B. So those are some of the challenges that we have been trying to work with. And sometimes you look at the comments online and somebody will say, oh, we don't need guns and the GGR should not exist. But in every island in the Caribbean, and almost every island and every country, there is an organization that deals with the firearms, and from a civilian perspective. And it's important to have those sorts of organizations because it provides the training. As the Commissioner indicated, we can't expect one entity to do everything. All right, so if you have various entities providing the necessary support, we can do that. And it's important that we look at how do you apply, how do you qualify, how do you maintain? Because remember, at every year, and unlike the US where the firearm is your right, in the Caribbean it's not a right, it's is a privilege, right? So how do you maintain your firearm each year, and how do you maintain your firearm every 5 years?
I was about to ask whether or not the GFRA has the same type of lobby as the NRA.
No, we don't, because the U.S. is completely different. No, and it's important that in the Caribbean, we have a very close relationship with some of the other associations. We have the Trinidad Rifle Association, we have the Barbados Rifle Association, there's the one in St. Lucia, we deal with Aruba, we deal with Jamaica. So we have a very good network in terms of discussions.
Is gun violence hurting your associations?
It is, because persons will have guns, firearms, weapons, and automatically believe that they shouldn't have guns. And even in the sport side of it, it is even affecting the issue of the sport development. I mean, while sport shooting is something that's been around for a long time, we have finally got into the window of having the sport development here in Grenada. And it is done in a safe manner. Since 2003, I mean, I must highlight, based on the guidelines and the range officer training that we have at the range, we have never had an incident in terms of anyone getting damaged on the range since 2003. And it's important to highlight this because of the regulations that we put in place, the policies that we put in place, and the safety measures that we put in place. All right, but I think for this discussion here, and we talk about gun crimes, part of the issue has to be how do we develop the sport? How do we, and we have had some discussions already with the commissioner in terms of different methods in terms of how we improve the sport and improve members, and it's work in progress. So if you notice some of the videos you've seen, we have members who have traveled different islands competing, and we have various disciplines. So when you talk about firearms, we talk about shotgun, which is the clay and trap shooting. We have the air rifle, we have the .22 rifle, we have the pistol precision. So there are different types of firearms that we use. So it's important that the membership and the viewing listeners understand that it's not just the crime, that the guns also have other aspects besides personal protection, but as a sport.
Just let me make a quick plug for him on what he has done in this fight. It is important to identify in a big discussion that when illegal firearms arrive here, they need to be fed, meaning that they need ammunition. We had a problem where licensed firearm holders were being used to purchase ammunition and hand it over to illegal firearm persons. That's a fact. We were able, having identified that, we dealt with the association as well as the dealers and had excellent collaboration with dealers in ensuring that licensed firearms for the procurement of ammunition remains strictly controlled. So a person cannot own more than a certain amount of rounds per year. Before, that was kind of loosely managed, and so you find that the illegal firearm users were obtaining ammunition, going to the range and pretending they want to try to shoot and buying rounds and going with it, as well as asking firearm licensed dealers to get rounds for them, because at that time they could have purchased anything. And I must say, Duene and Dowe and so has done very well in working with us to control that and make sure that while it is cutting on the bottom line because it's selling a product, but at the same time they understand the security connotation and have been able to address that quite effectively with the police force. Okay. So I just wanted to plug that for you, Duene.
Well, we'll take that plug as well. But let me just ask: is it a trend? And I'm going to ask the question because I'm supposed to, that a licensed firearm holder has two weapons, one registered with the RGPF, and there's another.
I see you looking at me as if I'm the one to answer, but I would say no. I think you have to look at the risk involved in having a legal firearm, and personally, I do not believe the risk is worth having a legal firearm.
The other question I will ask is whether or not this illegal firearm trade is because of the high prices one will face if going to a legitimate gun dealer.
No, as the Commissioner mentioned earlier, a legal firearm is in the range of 7,000. All right, a legal firearm ranges from about 2,000 up to 4,000, depending on the model, the caliber. So it's far less, right? But as indicated, in terms of buying the ammunition or buying and selling to the illegal market is something that we have to closely monitor.
Commissioner, let me just say some of the challenges. You did mention the collaboration in country between various units, FIU, SSU, Customs, and others. The movement towards acquisition of scanners, at the port, etc. But what are some of the challenges that you face in fighting this battle to ensure that we stop at this seemingly increase in importation of weapons and it doesn't translate into actual violence and killing in Grenada, because we're still in a relatively safe space?
Yeah. There are many challenges. Resources, of course, is one, and human, technical, mechanical resources, and we can go through the whole spectrum of that. You also have the issue where I don't think the threat is properly analyzed and identified by members of the public to build that collaboration. And one of the efforts we have to make is to see how we can build community resilience in identifying what role can the community play in addressing this particular issue. I believe in addressing this particular problem, our approach seems to be on enforcement, which is after the crime or the problem has been created. There is too little or probably nothing at all on prevention. We need to probably have budget lines, in my mind, targeting prevention. How do we prevent this problem from occurring in the first place, rather than responding to it after it has occurred? So that's a change that I would like to see. But our porous borders, the deficiency of resources, training and collaboration at the regional level, because from the discussions tonight, what has zoned in on me is that the problem we are facing is not within our domestic space. It starts out there. So we have to start thinking of fighting that problem extra-regional at the source countries rather than here. How do we do that more effectively? By collaborating with partner states in the region as well as extra-region to address that particular problem. There is some ways we can address that, but there is a lot of issues that will have to be done at the higher policy level to address those particular issues. But there are major challenges, but I think the conversation is in the right direction, and I think eventually we will get there.
Okay. Thank you very much. Viewers, we have to take a break, but when we come back, when we go into Commander Heerah and former Commissioner Griffith, and the question to them really would be, if there was a magic wand, what will be their wish list, as it were, in order to lower the type of gun violence we're seeing regionally? We'll be right back.
Rubigas, get cooking. Rubigas, clean, safe, and reliable LPG is the perfect solution for your commercial and everyday needs. For cooking at home or barbecuing, choose Rubigas LPG cylinders. Available in a variety of sizes from 20 to 100 pound cylinders. Rubigas LPG, clean, safe, reliable. Are you cooking with Rubigas?
Get Rubis, get going.
When a loved one passes on, we all need the comfort, support, and guidance of a trusted friend. You can rely on LaCour Brothers Funeral Home. We provide a personalized professional service that exceeds all expectations. Our dedicated staff responds to your every need with the greatest detail, ensuring affordability with a variety of options. Our upgraded state-of-the-art facilities, spacious air-conditioned chapel with live internet streaming, a modern, environmentally safe crematorium, the only of its kind on island, private viewing spaces, large on-site repast center, a modern transportation fleet. Join our burial society today and make personalized arrangements for that final moment as you prepare to enter your loved one into eternal rest. Visit or call LaCour Brothers Funeral Home and select a package that brings added comfort to the entire family. LaCour Brothers Funeral Home and Burial Society, continuing a tradition of excellence.
Here Here's a little known fact. There is only one place in Grenada that you can get an MRI scan done. That place is Spicile Imaging Center. Yes, Grenada, that's the truth. Other centers could offer you other scans, but Spicile Imaging provides an authentic MRI scan. Here's another little known fact. Spicile Imaging has 3 centers. We operate at Grenville, the Carnage, and at the Ocean House, Grandlands. We provide the widest range of laboratory tests and services. CT scans, x-rays, mammograms, ultrasounds, and a host of other services. We are fully staffed by a team of family doctors and specialists. Call us today at 444-7679 or 440-1500. or visit any of our 3 locations. Spicile Imaging, from seeing the doctor to getting lab tests, scans, and pharmacy services. We are here to take care of you.
You have some responsibility, because to pretend that you don't know who is doing it and what is going on, and to expect miracles from the police to know who did it or who is thinking about doing it or who is hiding firearms in your house. We're asking people, if you know who isn't doing this, do the nation a favor and get that information to law enforcement.
Good evening and welcome back to our program. We're discussing the importation of illegal weapons and some of the challenges with gun violence. I'm going to go to former Commissioner Griffith first and ask you, let's just dream as though you were the Minister of National Security. What would be on your wish list in order to reduce on gun violence? Some of the tools that you would like to see and some of the strategies implemented.
Well, I can speak about it from a local perspective as it pertains to Trinidad and Tobago and also Caribbean. As it pertains to Trinidad and Tobago, it would be simply to reignite the things that worked just about 15 months ago. From August 2020 to August 2021, there were 342 murders, and that was the lowest in about 17 years in any year in Trinidad and Tobago. So we had cracked it, we were getting there. Crime became the number 4 concern behind health, education, and the economy. So, and it had to do, as I mentioned, a lot to do with technology, proper training of the police officers, specific units, and putting things to provide, to minimize that product of opportunity for criminals. What I would like to see now, definitely, is a revamp of the criminal justice system. I heard they were speaking, Duene and Edwin, they were speaking about the cost for a firearm. It is almost the same thing in Trinidad and Tobago. So you pay just about $1,000 US for a legal firearm, and you pay about the same for an illegal firearm. The problem lies is when the police do their job, arrest an individual with an illegal firearm that can easily kill about 15 persons with one magazine. He is then going to go to court, plead guilty, and then be fined 5,000 TT, which is almost less than the price of the firearm, and then he goes back out onto the street, acquire an illegal firearm, and then probably commit a crime to get that firearm. So it's a revolving door. It makes absolutely no sense. We have situations where persons have been held with assault rifles, which could kill 30-odd persons in a few seconds, and then they're fined just a few $1,000s and they go back out onto the streets. That can't work. Unfortunately, politics plays a part. That's what the wish list I would like. You can't be in government in 2010 to 2015, where we saw the importance and we said it was a non-bailable offense if someone is found with an illegal firearm. And then when you get into the opposition, you say that it is the right of persons to get bail. So so they keep being held with an illegal firearm. You seize that firearm and you go back out onto the streets. So that has to change. You have to provide that deterrent for the criminals to understand that if and when held, then there's a price you're going to pay, which is your freedom. The second and final point has to do again with, apart from technology, I want to re-emphasize that concept of the National Operations Center, and Garvin could take the battle from there. That proved effective because what it had was every different arm of the protective services in Trinidad and Tobago working together in one area. It is similar to COBRA, the Cabinet Operation Briefing Room in the United Kingdom. We piggyback from that, making sure there was real-time information being fed between different arms of the protective services to have an immediate response. this has been shut down, and because of that, the law enforcement agencies now work in silos. One hand doesn't know what the other is doing. We need to reignite that and then do it likewise for the region. So I know that we speak about the importance of impacts at the ACCP, and many of these things are done from a policy level, but from an operationalized perspective, which is what I would like to see, the same way we have a national operations center. If every island in the Caribbean has that type of national operations center, we can ensure real-time information being passed, and not situations where sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning, I will get a call from one commissioner to me, listen, a Dowe vessel is now coming to your shore. We must have a proper system to make sure that there's a proper coordination in real time between different arms of the protective services, both locally and regionally.
Okay, thank you. Garvin?
Well, I'm just going to take a branch off of what Commissioner Griffith is saying. And a lot of the mechanisms, the infrastructure and the architecture is there. There may be some upgrades and there may be some need really now for expansion of the systems integration approach. But the need for that sort of regional coordination is paramount to move towards some of the quick wins and some of the results intended solutions, as Commissioner Martin would have alluded to, and even Noel to some extent. Speaking to answer the question specific, this is not going to be our closing remarks, is it?
No, you'll have another opportunity.
Okay, good, right, okay. So answering your question specific, taking the link of what Commissioner Griffith would have just spoken about, I think right now, and I would like to advocate strongly for it, is the formation of an RFIU, which is a regional firearm interdiction unit, controlled by a sort of regional coordinating approach with intelligence-led and technology-led policing and sharing of information and that type of. So you have situational awareness that will drive intelligence, that will drive operations. So the formation of an RFIU, where we can have members in Trinidad, specific, a regional firearm interdiction unit. We can have members of Trinidad in St. Vincent and Grenada, and they're working collectively and collaboratively against the same enemy, because it's one exporter. We are not a region of gun producers. We are a region of gun users. One exporter coming through one system, one channel, same boats, dropping off containers. So guys, the formation of a regional firearm interdiction unit with members integrating throughout the islands, highly resourced by some of our big brother players, is a step in the right direction.
Commissioner Martin, RFIU?
Well, I think we're alluding to what I spoke to earlier, led by impacts with the creation of a Caribbean gun crime unit, which is intelligence-driven, that is seeking to achieve exactly what Garvin has said. So I do believe, Garvin, we are going in the right direction. I'm hoping that this can be up and running in short order. A lot of work has been done on it. Police commissioners across the region has been briefed on it, and the mechanisms are now being put in place to implement it. I trust that, and that will work not just collaboration across the region, but you will also have the extra-regional collaboration. As I indicated, we also have stakeholders of the HSI, ATF, as well as Interpol interplay that will factor into that, led by CARICOM impacts. And I'm hoping that that will be a game changer. So I do agree with Garvin. He called it one thing, but certainly I believe it's definitely speaking to what is intended by the creation of the Caribbean Gun Crime Unit.
Mm-hmm. If I may jump in, Edwin, sorry. What I'm saying, I understand the concept of what the CARICOM firearms unit is intending to do. I'm adding more to it. I'm saying there needs to be some operational oomph, some muscles operationally, so that they don't have to depend intelligence out of CARICOM. We know the loops they had to jump through before you could get a unit to respond, and then the information is passed on the world, and that I'm saying no. An independent, specially tasked and resourced unit that has the sort of federal rights and authority throughout the region, utilizing the intelligence. So it's a formation of what you are saying, yes, but expanding with some operational muscle to have jurisdiction across the states.
I certainly hear you, and I'm hoping that we can have that type of collaboration, moving from policy to operations. Callers, we know that you're yearning to participate, so please feel free. 440-1252, that's our number. Feel free to weigh in on this topic of firearms possession, illegal importation, and the supposed increase in gun violence. Before we get our first caller, Duene, I hear that Grenada is looking to head to the Olympics.
Well, I must use that plug to highlight the major milestone that the Grenada Gun and Rifle has made in terms of having the association and having sports shooting now included under the National Olympic Committee and as an affiliated member. And prior to this, I listed the series of disciplines that we and so this year we are now pushing a lot of the disciplines and the development in that area, including the Paralympics and including the younger persons. When I got involved in shooting, I anxiously wanted to participate in sport, but by the time I am now able to participate, I'm now competing with younger persons with better vision, way more fit than I am. So the aim of the GGRA now, and I'm happy that we are at that level, and the acceptance now is to find ways to bring in the younger persons within, under the control of obviously in terms of the age and what they're able to use, but having younger persons involved and include the Paralympic discipline, the Paralympic Association. So that's what if I had a magic wand, those are the kind of things I would love to have, and also to have better calibers.
I think that was, I believe that was a plug at Commissioner Martin. Commissioner, before we get our first caller, let's just ask, what type of linkage is there between the importation of illegal weapons? Oh, sorry, we do have a caller online, so good evening, caller, and welcome.
Hello. I just want to make a comment. I'm rather surprised that particularly Commissioner Martin hasn't spoken about the marinas. In Grenada, we have a lot of marinas, and there is absolutely no official control on the marinas, and especially in the southeast of Grenada. And a lot of activity takes place on yachts coming and going freely as they could go.
Okay. Yes, we heard you, caller. We heard you. Commissioner Martin, you did speak of air, sea, and land in terms of that challenge, but the marinas?
Yeah, caller, thank you very much. And I alluded to it, but not expanded on it because we have a big panel. But I alluded to it by indicating the porous nature of our border. But the fact that you have asked this question, it affords me the opportunity to even give more clarity to it. Part of the firearm trafficking trade, and I indicate it dovetails also with the drug trade. They go hand in hand. You find that some of the legitimate traffic, that of yachts and so forth moving, is morphed into that illegal trade. So you have yachting takes place at the marinas. Those with illegal intent for trafficking firearm and drugs, they also use yachts to come in. And yes, the caller is correct that in order for this tightening of the ports, and when I speak of tightening of the ports and better scanning, caller, I am referring not only here to the container port on the Carenage, but all ports, including the port in Grenville, the port in Carriacou, the port at Prickly Bay. All where we have ports, we need to tighten that. Broader than that, we also need to have an active maritime port police security patrol mechanism to be checking on all of these yachts that we have docking at different ports and harbors across Grenada in all our different enclaves that we have, because these can also be different ports. So there is a lot we need to do, and caller, you're definitely on point in analyzing this properly. I thank you for your question.
Okay. I believe we have another caller online. Good evening and welcome.
Hello?
Yes, welcome. Go ahead.
Yes, as I said, I would like to find out how long does it take to register a legal gun and get a license for it. How long does that take?
Commissioner?
Obtaining a legal firearm varies in terms of time. As it stands now, sadly, it takes probably up to about 3 months before you can get a response. And I do know that there are members of the public who have been waiting longer than even that. That is because the vetting process for firearm has to be done by 2 agencies and departments before the reports are submitted to us at the administration for consideration. We recognize this anomaly with the problem of it taking very long to get a response, and people just want a response. Whether it is yes or no, I need a response. And so what we have done is started to implement a firearm vetting unit operating out of police headquarters to fast-track those applications. But even those efforts have been slowed by us bringing on board the vetting now of A-guns. And we have a massive backlog of A-guns that we need to clear. So I'm answering all of that, ma'am, to tell you that at this stage, it at least is a minimum of 3 months, but I know it can be a bit longer. But we will continue to thrive. Once we get rid of the backlog, we will become more efficient in delivering on this in a more timely manner. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I believe we have another caller. So good evening, caller. I seem as we have lost that one. Commissioner, the linkage, and you alluded to it there. Are we seeing the illegal importation of guns to support other illicit activities? Would be my question to you. But let's take the caller. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Yeah, good night.
Good evening to you. Yes.
Okay, just pop in there, and I recognize you have a serious program here. And I decided I want to make a call and find out, because I mean, it's interested of me, a guy like me that fish hunt and all these things like that. How do you take it? Can you talk about firearms? Tell me something. The butt guns, or you may call it, or the pellet guns, they are used as a firearm too. Is it so?
Okay, so Commissioner,
yes.
Manico and
yes, the A-gun is classified a firearm by our Firearm Act. It has always been that way, albeit we have not been enforcing it. But of course, the changes that taken place in the industry, in the creation of firearm, and other incidents that are being reported to us, we have started enforcing those issues where even the A-gun has to be regulated. So caller, if it is that you may have had a rifle that was registered by the police. In the past, if you have one, it's not just you can have it and do nothing with it. It would have at least been required to be registered at police headquarters. So anticipating if you have one and you did that, all that is required now is that you need to come in with the firearm to upgrade what you would have had as a register to get a license. Now, if you are trying to own a rifle for the first time, you need to apply to have one, and then you will go through the vetting process. Simply because we see that we have a responsibility to honor the license that would have been previously issued to persons who have a licensed A-gun. But for new applicants, you will be vetted. But I want to use the opportunity to reinforce that the vetting standards, the threshold for an A-gun is much lower than a high-powered weapon.
Okay, thank you. We do have another caller. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Good evening to you, and good evening to your guest. If I should ask the question, do you know the percentage of people who are owning the illegal or purchasing the illegal firearm and the source of income? Thank you, sir.
Just numbers of illegal firearms out there, I guesstimate, and source of income at $7,000. What type of business are they involved in?
Caller, if I could raise a magic wand and identify the persons that have illegal firearms, I will be aggressively be on the heels. But I really want to indicate, though, that on the trend that we are seeing, caller, we really do think that currently in state, and I'm speaking of Grenada, in state, that we seem to have an uncomfortable proliferation of firearms. And this is estimating that by the amount that we have been taken off the streets through our operations. So caller, where you come in is that if you or any member of the public has information to the effect that there are persons holding illegal firearms out there, we really do make an appeal for you to report that to us so that we can take the requisite action. It is dangerous to you, to your families, and to the rest of the community, particularly as we reside in a very small and close-knitted society. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. Time is just zooming by on us, so I am forced to go towards some closing comments. So I will start off with you, former Commissioner Griffith, just for some closing comments, closing thoughts on this idea that is, well, not idea, but this threat that is facing our region, the importation and use of illegal firearms. I'll then come to you, Garvin, and then our in-studio guests.
Sure, okay. I will agree with Edwin. I think we are in the right direction. We are getting there. There's a lot we still have to do. Some countries, there'll be different threats. For example, even in Trinidad and Tobago, as it pertains to that being an Olympic sport. In Trinidad and Tobago, you need to be 25 years old to have access or approval to have a firearm. So that alone is an issue by itself. I think we need to put some certain set practices to ensure that persons that have access to get firearms, for example, I do not see the approval for persons having a firearm with a 45, which can be seen as a cop killer, or a 5.56, or an assault rifle, known as an automatic rifle. There should not be a need for persons who are trying to get a firearm license to have those. But it is the right of a citizen, if it is that he has the qualification, and it is the state is unable to protect him, that he should have that access, to be afforded to him. I would just make a quick comment to recommend, Edwin, I don't know if you will have this. The FUL card is something that I put in place, and that FUL card is something that can be of immense value to you all, because that card, initially trying to be good, we had a book, an old book that will just be worn and torn, but the card has a chip, and with the chip, it will ensure that you will know if persons have renewed their permit. If it is someone as simple as being held for DUI in one part of Grenada, it can immediately be fed straight to the department of your FUL, your firearm department, to know that if there's a report of a domestic violence matter, because sometimes, with the bureaucratic red tape, it may not get there. So that type of technology to be used through a firearm card with a chip can be of immense value to ensure that if someone was given a firearm and he is not adhering to your requirements, it can immediately be red flagged so that you can take that necessary action. So those are little things that can assist in, especially as it pertains to persons with legal firearms. My final point, again, over 99% of the crime committed by firearms in the Caribbean, it is by illegal firearms, and that is where the focus should be.
Thank you very much, former Commissioner Griffith. Commander?
Yeah, sure. So we would be very aware that the extreme violence, how do we started the conversation tonight, the extreme violence linked to the crime. And I just wanted to add one thing, we didn't get a chance to speak about it tonight, which is the underpinning, that underground music and gang rap culture that is existing. You see it in Jamaica, you see it in Trinidad, and certain other parts of the country, and of the Caribbean, where there's an underground rap gang music that is promoting a gun culture and a gang culture, and the young minds, the 11-year-olds, 12, 13, 14-year-olds, they are gravitating towards that. And therefore, we have to understand, as we treat with the operations, the mano dura tactics, the steel fist tactics, to take out these illegal gun owners and the illegal trade, we also have to look at the socio-economic impact that is affecting our young people within the schools. And there are 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds in the schools who have seen an AR-15, have held a gun in their hand because there's a gun culture and there's a rap music that they're listening to that they're attracted to that is promoting that, and it leads towards why we would have now on crime scenes, rather than 2 shells being found on the ground by our crime scene investigators, 40, 50 shells, 9 million, 5.56, because of the psychopathology that exists, where someone executing or committing a homicide with a gun wants to shoot up the place and leave a footprint and leave a sort of intimidation and to make the headlines for their bragging rights. So we have to be very, very careful of the psychopathology that is involved with the video games. That Commissioner Griffith spoke about it, what is existing out there in social media to enhance and enforce our operational capacity to police social media, where that gang culture, gang music, and gang proliferation is also in the place where we are now seeing, for instance, a sort of inoculation of the mind of our 10-year-olds who are very soon going to be our 14-year-olds holding AR-15s and 9mm. So a socio-economic and a psycho sort of approach has to be also in hand with our mano duro tactics.
Thank you very much, Commander Heerah. And let me just bring you in, Duene, because we're talking about the gang culture. And in your closing comments, I know that the Grenada Gun and Rifle Association promotes safe use, responsible use. But then we have the video games, which almost like numbs the youngsters to violence. Is there anything that the association could do in addition to what they're doing to promote the safe use of handguns?
All right, so as I indicated earlier, in terms of getting more youths involved in the discipline in terms of sport shooting, but I highlighted also the family structure. I think sometimes we have to also again focus on, because if someone grows up in a proper family structure, the likelihood of them going into that criminal side is slightly different to someone who did not have that sort of support structure, leaning towards the gang and then getting themselves caught up in that environment. I think one of the challenges that we have had, and if I could just go along with that, is the issue of when we do our symposiums and trying to get persons to understand the laws. You get a handful, you get maybe about 400 or 500 persons max. While the Commission was not able to, at this point in time, provide the magnitude of how much we have now in terms of the stats. Even if we have over 1,200, let's just assume you say 1,500 or 2,000. The percentage of persons who would actually come and understand what the do's and don'ts, because as somebody with a legal firearm, leaving it in a bus, leaving it in a vehicle, and it gets stolen, now gets into the legal market. And those are the things that we have been trying to teach persons and train persons and give them in the know. And on top of that, we are operating on a law that was initially developed in 1968. Right, so there is a need to review the law. What are the penalties? What are all the various aspects of the law that we really need to capture to improve that firearm culture in Grenada.
Commissioner Martin, the last word is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. I must say I really enjoyed being part of the program, and I think there have been some very valuable contributions. I want to say to former Commissioner Griffith that the issue of the card is very timely, because we are only now finalizing firearm license as a card. The designs are finished, but there is no chip. So your comment is very timely to consider as we now look at issuing firearm license as a card. Prior to now, as a matter of fact, up until this point, we are still issuing a piece of paper as a firearm license. So we are now about to issue a card mirroring that of your driver's license. So thanks for the suggestion. I think the idea of a chip with whether or not it was paid is a good idea to find out whether or not it has been updated when we do our checks. I do believe that in order for us to stem this problem, I think this conversation, I trust that we had a good listening audience on it, that we have a critical problem across the region, and almost every member state, if not all, are adversely affected by the proliferation of illegal firearms. And so we need to stem this. In order for us to do that, I think we need to build a coalition against not just firearms, but crime as a whole in all its respects, at the local level, at the regional level, and with our international partners. A lot of ideas have been suggested here, and I do think that we can capitalize on them. I've taken notes of a few that I will take away that has definitely contributed to even enhancing the way we can look at approaching treating with issues. The conversation is good. Let the conversation continue. And of course, after the conversation, let us start with the action that can reverse this trend that is depressing our nation, our people, and our economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Edwin Martin, Commissioner of Police of Grenada, Mr. Duene Noel, the President of the Grenada Guns and Rifle Association, and of course, online, we had former Commissioner of Police and former Minister of National Security, Gary Griffith, and Commander Garvin, Heerah, expert and consultant. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for that you would have shared in illuminating this particular issue. And to you, our viewers and listeners, thank you so very much for being part of the Behind the Headlines family, for those who called in for your contributions. The program cannot be what it is without your participation, and we're extremely thankful for that. I'm your host, Colin Dowe, and look forward to joining you again 6 days and 22 hours from now. Have yourselves a good evening.